Welcome to This Week in Hearing. I am Gael Hannan, a hearing health advocate and author of Hear and Beyond, Live Skillfully with Hearing Loss with Sherry Everts. This week, we are talking about something that is not only important, but personal to me, cochlear implants. More specifically, an exciting new development for CI recipients, both externally and internally. Our guest is Brendan Murray from Cochlear Corporation, and he's joining us from Sydney, Australia. Brendan Murray is the Vice President of Cochlear Implant Product Portfolio and Strategy based in New South Wales, Australia, where he leads product and marketing strategy to bring Cochlear's hearing solution from inception to commercial release. He has more than 25 years of experience in the healthcare and medical devices industry, with global experience working in markets around the world, including Australia, the UK, Europe, South Africa, Middle East, and Africa. And I said South Africa, I meant South Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. I do not see my own country, Canada, there, but we'll need to talk about that, Brendan. Anyway, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you, Gail, and thanks for having me here, and welcome to your audience as well.
Yeah, that's great. Now, you may have gathered by now, Brendan, that I am not a techie. And I'm going to let you tell us about this exciting new system, the Cochlear Nucleus Nexa System. And I'm asking you if you could do that in terms that are simple enough for people such as me, people with hearing loss who may be considering cochlear implants or already have one, or for whom cochlear implantation is so important, so that we can understand it, but also so that the hearing care professionals who work with CIs won't be bored and will have a good understanding. So there's your challenge. Yeah.
Right.
Why don't you start off and tell us a bit about this great new system?
Sure. I think the important thing, as you've mentioned already, Gail, is this is a new system. So a system for us means it's both a new cochlear implant and also new sound processors and also the new programming software, and everything goes with that whole system concept. So it's not one, it's actually 7 different components all working together. But the real hero piece of this system is the new implant. And the implant has a completely new chip. And the chip is the brain of the implant. And that new brain allows us to do a number of novel things with this new Nexa system, which we're calling the world's first and only smart cochlear implant. And I'll explain a little bit why we call it a smart cochlear implant. So in the past, I think cochlear implants have had upgrades through the sound processor only. This system with this new implant allows us to make upgrades to the implant over the lifetime of the patient. So as new technologies become available, we can download what we call firmware. So it's got upgradable firmware capabilities, just like your smartphone. So when you get new firmware updates, you get new features and enhancements. This implant allows new technologies that may help you hear better, may give greater diagnostic abilities for the audiologist or surgeon to enhance the outcome of the patient. So that's what's really exciting about this new system, is its upgradability and its smartness. It also has memory, so we can store information on the implant about the patient's use of the device and also guide them on what's the best use in different listening environments. So there are a number of different aspects to this new system that enhances potentially the outcome for every candidate. And I think this journey that patients go on with their hearing device. So not just the first day they receive the device, but during that lifetime of their hearing journey. And whether that be a child who receives the implant at 1 or someone who's at a different stage in their hearing journey, there are benefits to having that upgradability and those other features around the memory that's on the device. So that's why we call it smart, and that's why it's so different to any other device that's been launched to the market before. I should say this is the first new implant system in 20 years, really, by any of the cochlear implant companies. So it is a significant breakthrough in that respect.
It sounds very exciting. So I want to get the bad news out of the way. When you said it's a smart implant system, it's not going to make me smarter, right? That's
No,
no.
no, the implant is smart, but it won't make the individual smarter. No.
But the other bit of bad news, I'm guessing, is that I have been implanted for 8 years now, and I have a Kanso. This is for new implants, right? I can't go, ooh, "Ooh, I want me one of them in my right side." That's not going to happen. Is that right?
It's a great question, and we had that question from a number of people who, like you, have already received their first cochlear implant. Now, we don't recommend that people who are doing very well, such as yourself, have their device removed and replaced, but we have seen many people opt to have their opposite ear, if it's appropriate, implanted with a Nexa device. So we do have many, many candidates using both the Nexa on one ear and a different device on the other ear. So that certainly is possible, but replacing the device that's working very well, that it clearly is for you, Gail, we wouldn't recommend that, but that's a discussion between your healthcare professional as to whether the opposite ear is. But there certainly is cases where people do need the devices removed and replaced, and that can happen, but we don't recommend that unless there's a very, very good reason to do that. But certainly opposite ear implantation is possible.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that because I am bimodal. So I'm currently using, because I use Cochlear, I use Resound on this side, and I have been approached. I don't feel that I'm ready yet because things sound more natural to me, but that could change. So let's say I go,
Yeah.
hey, I'd like to try the Nexa. Um, and I did. Let's say I was implanted. So I'd still be working on two separate systems. Is that right?
The systems would be different, but you'd be surprised how aligned they are. So we do consider that when we design these systems, that people may have different configurations of implants, but also they may have different configurations of sound processors. So they may have a Kanso on one ear and a Nucleus 8 on the other ear, or they may have a different generation of sound processors. So that's something we consider when we design the systems, that they work not only as a one system, but they can work as a bilateral system integrated together. So that is also possible. But the discussion as to whether your other ear is appropriate is one for you and your healthcare professional, your audiologist and surgeon to decide, is that ear at a level and are you comfortable that you want to go down that path? But certainly we have many people who've made that choice when it's appropriate.
You're right. And I was just asking as a possibility because for some people that would very much be
Yes.
something that's exciting. So let's go back to the Nexa. So what happens is with this upgrade of information and that sort of thing, I would not have to go let's say I have it. I would not have to go back to my CI audiologist and have it my processor changed. So what happened? What does the person with who has the Nexus system, what does this mean for them in their daily lives and when and things get changed in the system itself? Did that
Yes.
question make sense?
Yeah, a very good question. So what we do see is, and you would know this, that over a period of time, we introduce new sound processors to the market. So whether that be an on the ear or off the ear, like the Kanso or the Nucleus 8, and different generations of those from the Nucleus 6 all the way to Nucleus 8, patients go through upgrades and they happen periodically, usually on a 5-year cycle. And so usually for new technology, you have to wait 5 years, and that usually involves what we call front end processing. So how the sound processor diagnoses background noise and cleans up the signal and makes you hear better. But with a firmware update on the implant, you can send that to the patient through their implant. You can do it in two ways. So if there's a new technology we want to bring to the patient and we don't want to wait for that new technology, we can either send it through the programming software that the audiologists use. So when they connect your device, when you go in for your routine programming session, that will download a new version of what we call firmware, which is a new piece of information that the implant can then implement. And it may be something that improves your hearing in certain domains or gives you new diagnostic capabilities or even new efficiencies that make the battery last longer. So there's a number of things that could be. Another way we can potentially do it is we can send what we call wireless updates. So they can go through your app and they could speak directly through the sound processor to the implant. So that's two potential ways we can send these upgrades to the implant, either via the clinic programming software or via the Nucleus Smart app that many, many patients use today.
I mean, obviously, as a user, I would prefer that, just because I have to travel quite a distance,
Right.
and take a ferry and go to a different city. So to have that, so it's the same information, the same process, except your audiologist is doing it or your phone is doing it. Is that right?
That's right. But the audiologist would be notified that this firmware update is available. So they're aware of these updates and they would agree that those things should be brought out and what we call sent to you. And that's a really important point you mentioned about not having to go back to the clinic all the time, so that these updates are really convenient for the patient. Right now, we can only do it through the programming software, but certainly in the future, we'll be able to do it through your smart app. And to your point, which is really critical, clinics are really, really busy and they get very, a lot of it's difficult sometimes to go in and see your audiologist or your healthcare professional. So many patients want to self-manage their care. And so having them manage that through an app is much more convenient, and we are focused on that. There are other features in the Nexa which also enable the patient to manage themselves, or make it much more easy for the clinician to manage their patients remotely rather than having to bring them back into the clinic. And that's another aspect of the Nexa system, which is very desirable, that it does reduce the burden on the clinic through features such as memory on the implant, which we call a new feature called Smart Sync, where, for example, if you lost your processor, unfortunately, and you had to then travel all the way to the clinic, and the audiologist would then have to find Gael and then find your maps and then find the right processor and either get that to you or have you wait while they did that. With this new feature on the Nexa, we could simply, Cochlear or the clinic could send you what we call a blank or unprogrammed sound processor directly to you, and you just put it on back on your head, and the maps will transfer back into the sound processor, and you're back on air. So you don't need to travel to the clinic, and that's a feature we call Smart Sync. So that's another aspect of the smartness we have with this new system, that this ability to store the patient's maps securely with them all the time allows this feature that they could use should they unfortunately lose or break their processor and they don't have a backup. Either Cochlear or the clinician could just send you another processor unprogrammed, and then you just place it on your head, and within 20 seconds, you're back on air.
Well, I like that idea. In the past, when I got a new a Kanso and upgraded, or I went to Kanso 2, I'm trying to remember, but I the processors was sent directly to me from Cochlear in Denver. But I guess that already would have, through the system, been uploaded. Okay, I'm answering my own question here.
Yeah.
Um, so by that token, if these processors are unprogrammed, would it be easier for people to have backup processors? And I say that in the United States, it's my understanding, and many of my friends there who they get two processors when they are implanted. In Canada, with our health system, our laws, we get one. So we're always very nervous about losing it. So um, would it be more likely that most people
Mm.
who get the Nexa would have one or two extra unprogrammed processors?
Y- that's a great point. So you're absolutely right that in some places in the US, patients get two devices, a backup device and the device they use. And so they can just leave their backup device blank. And often what they'll choose is a BTE, a N8, and they'll have an OTE, a Kanso, and they may swap or they may leave that one. Now, the great thing about having memory is your latest maps are always there. So if you forgot to bring your processor into one of your mapping sessions, you may have a difference. But if you leave the processor blank and you just put it on, your latest maps will always be downloaded to the processor. So that's another benefit of this system, that even if you just don't need to worry about that backup system. You just have it there, and when you need, you just put it on, and then it will work should you need to do it. So that's an important feature. So that the second processor is always left blank until you need to use it, and then it will download those latest maps.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Is there any other benefit that the user would notice right away? I mean, you've said some good ones. Is there anything else that?
Yeah. So the other thing is the battery life. So the battery life on the new system is much extended. So we use a very efficient, what we call the way that the sound processor communicates to the implant, which we call the link. We've made that much more efficient, and we've done that in a very clever way. So the implant uses much less power, and it only uses power to the needs of each individual patient. So what that allows us to do is to shrink the externals if you're using a behind the ear processor, and make the battery life longer. So patients can use a smaller device and get longer battery life. So that's also an extremely desirable feature. So compared to someone who's using a non-Nexa N8, you can get 16 to 18 hours of battery life in a processor that's about 10% smaller and about 12% lighter. And for a Kanso user, that would translate into same size, but the battery life is several hours longer by using the Nexa device. So there's a power efficiency aspect to this as well, and a reduction in size of the externals with the behind the ear processor and a longer battery life, which is also when we talk to people when we're designing the system, and particularly recipients, the size and the battery life was a really important and critical factor about being confident that you will get a whole day of battery life and not be caught stranded with the battery running low somewhere where you didn't want that to happen. So that's another critical factor that we designed into the system.
That's huge. Now, I with the Kanso too, I get up pretty early in the morning, 5 or 6 o'clock, and I go to bed anywhere from, mid-evening to midnight, and my battery I always have lots of battery left, but I guess it depends on
Right.
lifestyle. I so what
Yeah.
would yeah.
There are individual differences in patients and characteristics in terms of the program that you use. Also, things like you know the skin flap you have, it varies from children to adults, and that also affects the battery life. So there are multiple factors, not just the programming levels that affect the battery consumption, but also the way that we implement what we call the link is also critical to how we can do that. So that multiple factors that are determined. So there is a range of battery performance that individuals get depending on their individual physical and physiological characteristics.
So when you say skin flap, that is the skin between my, processor and, the the thingy underneath the skin is what I call it.
Exactly. The, the,
Yeah.
the, the coil of the antenna, the one, you can call it the thingy. The thingy's great, but you know what we mean. So the bigger the range that the link has to cover, the more energy it consumes. So simply that translates into battery life.
It's exciting. It really is exciting, and I am very envious. I'm very envious. Of course, a smaller external processor is always of excitement. Especially for older people when our hair isn't as luscious and thick as it used to be, something a little smaller that can hide behind the few wisps of hair we have next left. This is great. Is there anything like really super technical you'd like to say to our hearing care professionals who like the numbers and techy stuff? Is there anything else that
Think so we launched this new system in June, and the Food and Drug Administration just approved it in July. And I think they'll begin to see more information about this. I think going around and presenting on this new system, what I feedback from the professionals is certainly the thing they're most excited about is what we call the upgradable firmware aspect, and that's this ability to download new features into the implant. And they can be things like new coding strategies. This implant has incredible ability to do novel stimulation strategies, so coding strategies. So we're developing a number of new coding strategies and looking at the benefits they may bring. There are other capabilities where we can look at the neural survival across the cochlea using some very smart diagnostic tools within the implant to look at, if you like, the topography of the neural survival and see whether that helps place stimulation in the right place to help enhance the stimulus strategy of the patient individually. And I think the other thing they're very excited about is this smart sync with the memory on the implant. So those are the three things when I talk to the professionals that they're particularly excited about. And to your point about not having to come back to the clinic all the time to seek treatment when it could be done in a different way, these things are also very exciting for the busy clinic as well.
that's amazing. I know that I'm gonna have to look up neural survival when I get off this call. And so my question was, when was it released? And you said in June at the FDA. That's in the United States. Do you just happen to know when it might be available in Canada?
So I believe we have, I'm not in obviously the North America region, but I believe we have approval now from Health Canada and the FDA, and that was in July. So the product will begin to become available in North America, I believe, from August. So I think it's approved in both markets, as far as I'm aware, both, and I think available from August onwards. Um, as far as I understand. So in that time window, I think is what you're looking at. So, and the first approval actually came in Europe. So each jurisdiction has a different regulatory environment. So Europe got it in June, and then US got it in July. Canada got it at the same time. So it's a little bit of work to get it onto the ground. So August, September is the timeline we're looking at
Yeah,
launch.
those Europeans, they always like to think of themselves as farther ahead, right? Uh, this has been absolutely fantastic. It does get me excited, and I can't wait to talk to my audiologist, who's a cochlear implant as well as a tinnitus. We won't talk about tinnitus now, but that's another interview for another time. So I want to thank you so much. Whenever I talk to someone who's very technical, I'm always feeling a little inferior, and I don't feel that way here. My contribution to the hearing loss arena are different, but I'm absolutely in awe and grateful for people and organizations like Cochlear who've made this has made our lives easier. I know that in the 8 years since I've had a cochlear implant, I hear so much better. It hasn't been without challenges for me, but at the end of the day, I hear better. And one of the key things is right now I'm streaming with through my mini mic and through my computer and hearing as clearly as I ever have in my life, talking to you on literally on the other side of the world, or at least across the Pacific. So I want to thank you for spending this time with us, Brendan. I really do. Is there any other last thing? Oh, I meant to talk about that.
Look, I think the main thing is just how incredible these cochlear implant devices are, and that not enough people are really getting them. We think that less than 1 in 10 who could benefit from these incredible pieces of technology do. So certainly talk to your clinician about the need to have these devices if you're struggling with your hearing aids, but really they are transformational, not only from a hearing perspective, and I'm sure you can talk to this scale from a lifestyle perspective as well. It changes so much for people who receive them. And that's why I love working in this industry and seeing people like you and talking to people like you. It's been terrific.
Yeah, it's great. It's all about connection and communication. That there was a time in my life when I realized that I needed to switch my goal from just wanting to hear better to wanting to communicate better, because it's communication that connects us to each other as people, and technology is so much a part of that. But there's all the other things of self advocacy and learning how to all the interpersonal things. So, anyway, Brandon Murray, thank you so much, and I certainly look forward to meeting you in person one of these days. And in the meantime, we're happy to spread the news about this fabulous new system that Cochlear has.
Great. My pleasure. And thanks for having me, Gail.